Hey everybody! In today's video, I'm going to do watercolor powder monoprinting with the help of my gel press and some paper Artsy infusions and some beautiful products from Altenew. To start with, I have die cut this peony spray shape out of a card front, and I actually have that stuck down onto my 3x5 gel press. I'm going to reposition it. It was slightly off the edge of the gel press. And I'm going to use this opening as my printing surface. What's nice about the gel press is the paper adheres to it really well, so it becomes a very good mask. I'm using Golden Sands Paper Artsy Infusions watercolor powders, and I'm just shaking them through the opening of the die cut onto the gel press. A little bit of this powder goes a long way, so you don't need very much. And since I'm doing a print, I'm going to get the extra watercolor powder off of the cardstock because I want the outer area to remain white. Any little soft paintbrush will do. You could probably even use an air can because the surface of the gel press is a little sticky, so the powder in that area will stay put. Now I'm taking a piece of Bristol Vellum. I use Strathmore. This will be linked below the video and on my blog post. And I'm just lightly misting the paper itself. Then you just do a normal monoprint, just applying that wet paper to the gel press opening that has the watercolor powder on it. And you want to really rub it to make sure that there's not extra pooled water when you pull it up, and so it doesn't distort the shape. But now you have sort of the general shape of the peony, and you have a white area surrounding that. So it gives you kind of the abstract shape that's going to go behind my stamping. Now, if there's still dry powder on the paper, you can mist it again and just let that fan out a little bit. So I'm going to let that sit to dry. And then we're going to do the opposite. So I just clean my gel press with an absorber, and I have it actually stuck to the packaging of the die so that it can sit on a non-porous surface. And then you want to put the opposite, the actual shape that the die cut out, down, and then make sure it's in the right orientation for your stamp, which I'm not doing here. So don't do what I do. I actually should have turned this upside down, which you will see later. But that's why I make mistakes, so that you don't have to. So again, I'm just shaking a little Golden Sands and cleaning up the die cut, because since the paper I'm putting down is wet, it will pick up any little strays. And this is an atmospheric watercolor technique, so it does not need to be perfect in any way. I'm just trying to get the extra powder off. So again, spritzed the Bristol Vellum, which is a cardstock that can take a lot more water than regular stamping cardstock, and that's why I like it for light water techniques. And then I'm just rubbing it in, making sure that the water gets absorbed into the paper and doesn't puddle. And that's what helps you keep a cleaner shape. So there's the outline, and that's pretty perfect, even if it is completely upside down in the wrong way, which I won't realize until later. So then I'll spritz any little dry crystals again. And now look at this adorable teeny die cutting machine from Altenew. I love this thing. It's so cute. And I finally have a die cutting machine that will fit in my videos. I like to film pretty close up. And so hauling my Big Shot, my full-size die cutting machine, over to my desk and trying not to run into the camera and everything is pretty much impossible. So I was completely stoked to see this adorable little die cutting machine. Now the plates are about 3 inches wide, so you'll want to cut your paper down to 3 inches. It's perfect for sentiments which is what I'm using it for here. This is also Altenew. This is a gorgeous floral and sentiment set. So I'm using gold glimmer paper for one, and I always peel the backing off of my glimmer paper just to make it easier to cut. And then I'm going to cut another one in white because I think the background on one will look better with a white die cut, and I'll use gold on the other. This little guy is very easy to crank. Very easy. And it's just so cute with all the flowers on it. I can hardly stand it. It's ridiculously adorable. I have my little hello here. This is a beautiful font and a really delicate die cut. You be careful when you're taking it apart. There's one little string attaching the H that I'm trying really hard not to tear here. There you have the die cuts, and here are the two pieces of Bristol Vellum. You do want to make sure that they are completely dry before you do any more stamping or embossing. And I'm going to go ahead and use my embossing buddy just to make it extra sure. Watercolor can be a little tricky because the paper is designed to pull water into the fibers, and so it can hide in there and be sneaky and hold on to your embossing powder where you don't want it to. So always make sure it's dry and make sure that you use an embossing buddy. So here I'm just positioning the Peony Spray stamp, and I'm going to take some Altenew embossing ink and ink this up. This is a beautiful, intricate stamp. And so what I like to do when I'm embossing something that has very detailed lines like this is put it in the MISTI and do several applications of the embossing ink. The other thing that I'm dealing with is the powder. Even though I've used the embossing buddy, you can still have a little bit of actual crystals adhering to the paper when you use watercolor powders. And so I always want to make sure I get a really good impression with the embossing ink before I add the powder. Now I will be embossing this in black. I'm using Brutus Monroe Raven embossing powder. This is a really interesting wax-free embossing powder, and I find that it gets really good details. So the black is really dramatic against the yellow. I actually don't know anything about peonies. I don't know if they come in yellow, but my peony is yellow, so there. Creating my own reality. That's what I do with stamping. That's why I like it so much. So that's nice and detailed. There are some darker walnut stained crystals in Paper Artsy Infusions. That's what I like about the color is it has this warm element from the walnut stain throughout it. But when I'm using a dark embossing powder, that makes it a little hard for me to tell if I have stray embossing powder or if I'm looking at the walnut stain crystals. So, but you can always take a paintbrush and just clean up if you have a little stray. So I'm embossing this. It's still magic for me, embossing every single time. It is like complete sorcery. It's very fun. And for the one where I did the background, see, it's backwards. That's right, dummy, you did it wrong. So don't do what I do. You need to flip it upside down. So I redid one for you. It's a good life lesson there. And now it's in the proper orientation to actually stamp an image inside the frame that I created with the watercolor. So I'm going to use this in my MISTI too. I am going to be using black ink here. And you can see what a good little outline this is for the stamp. Even though this is my mini MISTI, since the cardstock is worn a little bit, this is kind of a 4-magnet job, I'm not going to lie. It's warped, not worn. It's been a long week already, even though it's only Wednesday. Or Friday for you, if you're watching this. So I'm using Altenew Crisp ink in jet black to stamp this image. This is such a beautiful flower. And I'll probably stamp that twice just to make sure I get it where I want it. I'm actually going to be doing my stamp etching technique on this flower. It's one of my favorite things to do with floral images is go back with a 0.03 Copic Multiliner and doodle. And then here's the other embossed one. Head over to my blog. There is a giant Altenew giveaway going on. And thanks so much for watching.